One of the things that's happening as superhero movies integrate more and more into our lives is they're starting to feel a lot more like comic books. That's exactly what X-Men Apocalypse feels like to me. And like comic books, you can go from issue to issue and like what some of the creators do with the characters and not like what some of the creators do with some of the characters. X-Men Apocalypse, I think, takes a step down from the momentum and the fun and the humanness and the storytelling of X-Men Days of Future Past. I do like X-Men Apocalypse, but I think that there are some pretty crazy big problems in this thing, and I think more than anything, the movie kind of suffers from its sense of scale and its sense of ambition. They've crafted a story around the world's most fearsome mutant, the most powerful mutant of all time. He's played by Oscar Isaac, and in the comics they call him Apocalypse, but he's had many names over centuries of rule and darkness in human history. But Apocalypse has surrounded himself with all of these ex-heroes and turned them into villains, and what ultimately ends up happening is they have to face off against this new crop of X-men and women that Professor Charles Xavier is recruiting into his school for gifted youngsters. They're obviously trying to connect to the 80s era Marvel and X-Men comics. This movie is set in the 80s, so there's a kind of a stylistic tone. The brand new Nightcrawler in this movie, which I loved actually, he's one of my favorite characters in the X-Men universe. He wears a Thriller jacket, a full-on Michael Jackson Thriller jacket, and I got a good kick out of that. But there's lots of 80s touches all the way through there, lots of styles, lots of hairstyles, lots of clothing. You know, I think visually they kind of nailed that 80s era comic book tone, but one of the things that the movie kind of suffers from is that we've got a lot of actors in front of green screen and a lot of CG painted elements, and it did feel a little like we're watching an Ed Wood movie for some of these pieces, you know, where people are just being so elaborate and they're pretending to have big force fields all around them, and then there's lots of superhero sort of pose for the poster type moments where people are in the background in full costume, almost like cosplayers at a con or something like that. And everybody's just standing and gritting and tucking their guts in and pinching their butts, and you're just like, okay, is that what the movie's going to be for the whole thing? And then of course then we cut to like a CG animated ship scene with lots of shipping containers flying through the air, but everything looks artificial and like a cutscene from a video game from 10 years ago or something like that. That's not to say that the effects all the way through this thing are cheese bad. There are lots of good effects. There are lots of great stunt sequences in here. I think the reason why this movie still works and still resonates is because Bryan Singer has interwoven a lot of complexity into these X-Men films, and there's a lot of, you know, subtle and not so subtle, connections to the previous X movies, and I really dug that. And I think what's going to be interesting is to see the jigsaw puzzle of this whole, you know, suite of X films under the sort of supervision of Bryan Singer, all pieced together in a chronological order, because they're sort of scattered all over the place now. And I think there is a consistency here that is really quite remarkable, and that even extends to the casting of some of the brand new actors. I like the look and feel of our brand new Storm. I think she's terrific. I've already mentioned my my admiration for Nightcrawler, although the X2 Nightcrawler still stands as one of my favorite superhero appearances of all time. I loved that movie. I was Alan Cumming back in X2, and he did a great job. This new kid, not quite up to par there, but I think he's also dealing with the fact that now in these superhero movies, it's less about surprise and more about connecting to the mythology and the lore that we're familiar with. And that's something that they've been able to kind of nail with the X-Men movies recently. I think they did a fantastic job with X-Men Days of Future Past. And, you know, I think they've done a decent job again this time. I liked our new Scott Summers as well. You know, I think he does a pretty cool job and really kind of shows off the power of Cyclops, which I think has been missing from a lot of the X movies. Of course, we've got Mystique back, played by Jennifer Lawrence, and she's solid. I'm getting a little bit tired of Eric Lenscher having, sort of this confliction of whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, and Xavier constantly trying to bring him back to the light side. I think we've played that storyline to death by this point, and I'm honestly hoping that we don't see Michael Fassbender in the next X-Men movie. I think that's enough Magneto for a little while. Olivia Munn, I think, does a pretty interesting job too. She does have to kind of stand and snarl for big chunks of this movie, but when she does the action sequences and she's got these cool kind of laser swords and laser whips, it's hard not to be impressed by some of that stuff. It's okay eye candy. It just gets kind of muddled and lost by its supersizedness, you know, and it just looks like a cartoon after a little while. X-Men, I think, is more interesting when we get the character beats and the character stuff and you know, really solid storyline and honestly a little bit more humor, and I think we're missing that. Even the plug your ears if you don't want any spoilers. Even the Wolverine cameo that's in this movie is cool, but it missed a little of that ferocious, you know, comedy snap that we've had with previous Wolverine appearances. Overall, X-Men Apocalypse still works, though. It's a fun superhero movie. It's interesting that I'm seeing this so soon after Captain America: Civil War. It's definitely not that caliber, but it's still pretty fun. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Hey, thanks for checking out that video on our EPN channel. It's just one small part of the things that we make around here. So if you liked it, don't forget to check out some of our other vids and hit that subscribe button.